The Starlight Alliance had once stood as the pinnacle of interstellar unity, a coalition of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations bound by a shared purpose: to maintain peace, foster cooperation, and defend against external threats. For centuries they had succeeded, their fleets unmatched, their diplomacy unbreakable. But now, the Alliance lay in ruins. World after world had fallen to the relentless advance of the Vekari Hegemony, a merciless empire that carved its dominion through annihilation rather than conquest. Their warships, sleek and predatory, moved with an efficiency that defied conventional tactics, striking at the heart of the Alliance's strongest systems and leaving nothing but devastation in their wake. Entire planets, thriving hubs of culture and knowledge, had been reduced to lifeless husks, their civilizations erased in moments. The hegemony did not negotiate, did not assimilate, did not spare those who resisted. They simply exterminated. The Alliance's fleets, once mighty, were now fractured. What remained of their forces drifted in the void, battered and outnumbered. Their once proud formations now little more than scattered remnants struggling to survive. Officers who had once commanded vast armadas now found themselves leading skeleton crews aboard crippled warships, their morale eroded by years of unending losses. The war had drained every resource, every strategy, every weapon at their disposal, yet nothing had stemmed the tide. The hegemony adapted faster, countered every maneuver, and crushed every counteroffensive before it could gain momentum. The Alliance had tried diplomacy, but the Vekari saw no value in words. They had attempted guerrilla warfare, but the hegemony's precision strikes annihilated even the most hidden resistance. Now only one option remained, one that many had dismissed as myth, legend, or outright madness. In the dimly lit war room of the last remaining Alliance command vessel, the Ecliptic Resolve, Supreme Commander Sira Ven stood before the gathered officers, her voice steady despite the weight of impending defeat. "We have no more time," she said, her eyes scanning the weary faces of admirals, generals, and diplomats. "The Vekari will not stop until we are all dead. Our only chance is to call upon the ones who vanished long ago." A murmur of unease rippled through the room. The name had not been spoken in decades, not since the last war had ended in catastrophe. But now, desperation had stripped away all hesitation. Sira pressed a control panel, bringing up a long-forgotten star chart. A blinking marker pulsed on the edge of known space, a signal so ancient that most systems had erased it from their records. "They gave us this," she continued. "A message, a frequency, a warning. Call only if all else fails." The officers exchanged uncertain glances. Some whispered in disbelief, others looked away, unwilling to acknowledge the possibility. But there was no other path. With a deep breath, Sira initiated the transmission. The signal surged through the void, a plea carried on a frequency that had not been used in centuries. Then, they waited. And for the first time in the long, desperate war, hope flickered in the darkness. The Vekari Hegemony was not merely an empire. It was an unyielding force of annihilation, a civilization that had long abandoned diplomacy in favor of absolute subjugation. Their origins were shrouded in secrecy, their history lost to time, but their present was undeniable. They were the most formidable power the galaxy had ever known. Unlike the Starlight Alliance, which had sought balance and cooperation, the Vekari operated with a singular, chilling doctrine. Existence was only justified through dominance. Any species that resisted their rule was deemed unworthy of survival. They did not enslave, nor did they seek to integrate conquered worlds into their fold. Instead, they erased them, reducing entire planets to molten wastelands, their populations wiped out with ruthless efficiency. Their warships were unlike anything the Alliance had ever encountered. Sleek, angular, and seemingly devoid of any visible weaponry, they moved with an eerie silence, their propulsion systems leaving no trace of energy emissions. When they struck, it was with calculated precision, targeting command centers, planetary infrastructure, and military installations with surgical accuracy. The hegemony did not waste resources on prolonged sieges or drawn-out battles. They deployed their fleets in coordinated waves, overwhelming defenses in mere minutes before vanishing into the void, leaving behind only smoldering ruins. Their technology was decades, perhaps centuries, ahead of anything the Alliance had developed, and their tactics bordered on the supernatural. They anticipated every maneuver, countered every strategy, as if they could see the battlefield before it unfolded. The Alliance had fought valiantly, but their efforts were futile. The Vekari had no weakness, no hesitation. They had no interest in negotiation, no regard for the value of life beyond their own. Every attempt to reason with them had been met with silence, every offer of peace ignored. Their war was not one of conquest in the traditional sense. It was a war of extinction, a campaign to eradicate all opposition until only they remained. The Hegemony's leaders, known only as the Vekari Ascendants, had never been seen. No recordings, no transmissions, no emissaries. Their will was enforced through the unrelenting efficiency of their fleets, and their presence was marked only by destruction. The war had lasted for decades, and in that time, the Starlight Alliance had lost entire systems. Their once thriving colonies were now graveyards, their fleets decimated. The Hegemony did not retreat, did not falter. They simply advanced, unstoppable, unyielding. And now, with the last of the Alliance's forces scattered, with their leaders exhausted and their hopes fading, the only question that remained was whether the ones they had summoned would answer, whether the ancient power, the forgotten force, would return to face the Vekari, whether the ones who had vanished into legend would emerge once more to decide the fate of the galaxy. The war room of the ecliptic resolve was silent, save for the soft hum of the ancient console before Sierra Ven. The blinking marker on the star chart was more than just a relic of forgotten history. It was a ghost from a time when humanity had last walked among the stars. The frequency embedded in the coordinates was the last known transmission from the human civilization before they vanished. A message encoded in a language so archaic that even the most advanced translation algorithms struggled to decipher it. Yet, the words had remained unchanged for centuries. Call only if all else fails. Sarah exhaled sharply, her fingers hovering over the transmission controls. The officers around her were divided. Some, like Admiral Threx, a towering, cybernetically enhanced warlord of the Zalari, leaned forward with grim determination. Others, like High Minister Elira of the Luthari, looked away as if the mere act of reaching out to the humans was an admission of defeat. The Luthari, known for their philosophical detachment, had always viewed the humans as a myth, a tale woven into history to inspire hope in times of despair. Now, faced with extinction, the myth was their only option. Lieutenant Oren, the Alliance's chief signal analyst, hesitated before speaking. "Commander, we've analyzed the frequency. It's intact, but we don't know if anyone will respond. The humans disappeared over 600 cycles ago. If they're still out there, they may not recognize this signal as urgent." His voice was laced with doubt, but Sarah met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "We don't have the luxury of doubt," she said. "If we do nothing, the Vekari will erase every last one of us. We have to believe they're still listening." She pressed the final command, sending the distress signal into the void. The moment it left the ship, a strange silence settled over the war room, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. The transmission pulsed outward, carried on a frequency that had not been used in centuries. It was a desperate cry, a message across time, reaching for the one force that might still stand against the hegemony. Minutes passed, then an hour. The officers remained tense, their eyes fixed on the comms console, waiting for a response that might never come. Some whispered prayers to gods long abandoned. Others muttered theories about what the humans might be if they still existed at all. But Sarah Ven remained still, her mind racing with the possibilities. If the humans answered, would they be saviors, or something far worse? Then, a voice. Calm, unreadable. Transmission received. Stand by. The room froze. The words were simple, but their weight was immeasurable. The humans had answered. The legends were real. And now, the fate of the Starlight Alliance rested in the hands of those who had vanished into the unknown. The war room of the Ecliptic Resolve erupted into chaos the moment the transmission was confirmed. Officers scrambled to verify the signal, their hands trembling over consoles as they rechecked the data. The frequency was real. The message had not been intercepted by an enemy mimic, nor was it a malfunctioning echo from the past. The humans had answered. Admiral Threx, his cybernetic eye flickering with rapid calculations, was the first to break the stunned silence. "Can we trace the origin of the signal?" His voice was sharp, edged with both skepticism and urgency. Lieutenant Oren's fingers danced across the interface, pulling up a star chart that had not been updated in centuries. "The signal came from beyond the Epsilon Drift," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's deep in uncharted space. No known colonies, no recorded planets." He hesitated. But the signal wasn't just a reply. It's moving, fast. A shiver ran through the assembled officers. No species in the galaxy possessed the capability for instantaneous travel. Even the Vekari relied on warp corridors and gravitational slingshots to traverse the void. But the human signal was closing the distance at speeds that defied comprehension. Sarah Venn turned back to the comms console, her voice steady despite the storm of uncertainty raging within her. "We need more information. Can we establish a direct link?" Oren hesitated before shaking his head. "No response to further transmissions. They're approaching, but they're not communicating beyond the initial message." Before anyone could react, the ship's long-range scanners flared to life, their displays flickering with unreadable data streams. Then, a single, chilling report appeared. Multiple unknown vessels entering sector. Velocity, relativistic. No identifiable energy signatures. The room fell into a stunned hush. There were no energy emissions, no warp signatures, no ion trails, no gravitational distortions. The human fleet was cloaked in a way that defied all known sensor technology. They weren't just arriving. They were already here. Then, the first sighting. The viewport darkened momentarily before a formation of sleek, obsidian-hued warships emerged from the void, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They moved in perfect unison, their formations impossibly precise, their engines silent. The Alliance officers stared in awe and dread as the ship surrounded the Ecliptic Resolve, their presence alone a statement of power. Admiral Threx's mechanical fingers tightened around the railing. "They're not here to negotiate," he muttered. "They're here to act." A new transmission crackled through the comms. This time the voice was different, deeper, more resonant, yet still unreadable. "Starlight Alliance forces, stand down. We will handle the Vekari." The words sent a ripple of unease through the room. They didn't ask for confirmation. They didn't offer reassurances. They simply commanded. Sarah Venn clenched her fists. The humans had returned, but they were not the same as the legends. They were something else entirely, something beyond the comprehension of the galaxy they had once been a part of. And now, they were about to reshape its fate. The human fleet moved with a precision that defied comprehension. Unlike the rigid hierarchical formations of the Starlight Alliance, or the calculated aggression of the Vekari Hegemony, the humans maneuvered as if their ships were extensions of a singular consciousness. There were no visible commands, no fleet-wide transmissions, only silent, coordinated movements that placed them exactly where they needed to be, as if they had already foreseen the battlefield's evolution. Then came the first strike. A pulse, silent, invisible, rippled through the void. It was not an energy beam, nor a projectile. It was something else entirely. The sensors aboard the Ecliptic Resolve barely registered the disturbance before the Vekari fleet began to collapse. Entire warships, once impervious to conventional weaponry, flickered out of existence as if erased from reality itself. Some vanished in an instant, others disintegrated in slow, horrifying increments, their structures unraveling molecule by molecule. The Hegemony's warships, designed to withstand the most devastating armaments in the galaxy, were defenseless against an attack they could neither detect nor counter. Lieutenant Oren's voice was tight with disbelief. "Commander, we're detecting anomalies, massive gravitational distortions, but they're not natural. They're engineered." His fingers trembled as he pulled up tactical readouts. They're targeting the Vekari's command nodes, their propulsion systems, their entire fleet coordination infrastructure. It's as if they're dismantling them from within. Admiral Threk's mechanical eye scanned the unfolding carnage. "This isn't warfare," he muttered. "This is execution." The Vekari, for all their ruthless efficiency, had no defense against an enemy that operated outside the known laws of physics. Their ships, designed for speed and firepower, were reduced to drifting husks before they could even mount a counterattack. The humans did not engage in prolonged battles. They struck, and the enemy ceased to function. Then, the second phase of their assault began. A massive construct, unlike anything the Alliance had ever recorded, emerged from the void. It was not a warship in the traditional sense. Its form was too alien, too vast. It hovered above the battlefield, its obsidian hull absorbing all light, its presence radiating an oppressive stillness. The Vekari, recognizing the shift in momentum, scrambled to retreat, but it was too late. The construct activated. A field of distortion expanded outward, encompassing the battlefield in an instant. The Vekari warships caught within its reach convulsed, their structures warping, their crews screaming in confusion before their transmissions cut out entirely. The Alliance's sensors struggled to process the phenomenon. Some readings suggested time dilation, others indicated a complete breakdown of matter itself. What was certain was that the Vekari had no defense against it. Commander Sarah Ven's breath caught in her throat as she watched the Hegemony's fleet disintegrate. "They're not just fighting," she whispered. "They're rewriting reality." The humans had not come to win. They had come to ensure that the Vekari would never threaten the galaxy again. The battlefield was a graveyard of shattered warships and drifting debris. Where once the Vekari Hegemony's fleet had loomed with unshakable dominance, now there was only ruin. The human construct, its dark form still hovering over the remnants of the engagement, pulsed once before its field of distortion collapsed. The void returned to its natural state, yet the presence of the humans lingered, an unspoken weight pressing upon the surviving Alliance forces. Commander Sarah Ven stood at the center of the Ecliptic Resolve's command deck, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Hegemony's forces were gone, utterly erased, not just defeated. No survivors. No wreckage. It was as if the Vekari had never existed. The implications sent a chill through her. The Starlight Alliance had spent decades fighting a war they could not win, and now, in a matter of moments, the humans had ended it. But at what cost? Admiral Threx, his cybernetic eye flickering with unreadable calculations, turned toward her. They didn't just destroy the Vekari, they removed them from the equation. His voice was low, almost reverent. This wasn't a battle, it was an extinction. Sarah exhaled sharply, forcing herself to remain composed. "We need to assess the damage," she said, though the words felt hollow. There was no damage to assess. The enemy was gone. Their warships, their command structures, their very presence. Obliterated. The Hegemony had been the most ruthless force in the galaxy, and yet the humans had made them seem like an afterthought. Lieutenant Oren, still staring at the sensor readings, finally spoke. "Commander, we're picking up something else. The human fleet. It's not stopping." Sarah's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Oren hesitated before pulling up a new display. "They're moving deeper into Hegemony-controlled space. Their formations are still intact, and their targeting systems are locked onto something else." He swallowed hard. "They're not done." A new transmission crackled through the comms, the same unreadable voice as before. "Threat neutralized. Proceeding with containment." Containment. The word carried an ominous weight. The Hegemony's fleet was gone, but the humans were still advancing. Sarah turned to Threx. "Where are they going?" The Admiral's mechanical eye scanned the incoming data. "They're targeting Hegemony, strongholds, planets, shipyards, command centers. Every major Vekari installation is being marked for elimination." He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "They're erasing the Hegemony entirely." Sarah's breath, caught in her throat. The Vekari had been merciless, their war a campaign of extermination, but the humans weren't just ending the war. They were ensuring that the hegemony would never rise again. Illyra, the High Minister, finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. This isn't just a victory. This is a purge. Syrah clenched her fists. The humans had saved them, but in doing so, they had rewritten the very fabric of the galaxy. And now, the Alliance could only watch as their saviors continued their relentless march. The ecliptic resolve drifted in the silence of the void, its crew staring at the tactical displays in stunned disbelief. The human fleet had vanished as swiftly as it had arrived, leaving behind only the absence of the Vekari Hegemony. No transmissions, no warnings, no final words, just the cold, irrefutable reality that the enemy was gone. Syrah Ven stood motionless, her gaze locked on the fading coordinates of the human ships. The battle had been over before it began. The hegemony, an empire that had crushed entire civilizations with ruthless efficiency, had been erased in mere moments. And now, the Alliance was left to reckon with the enormity of what had transpired. Lieutenant Orin finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. They weren't just here to fight the Vekari. They were here to remind us of what we never understood. Admiral Threk's mechanical eye flickered as he processed the data. They never left, he muttered. They were always watching. Syrah's hands tightened into fists. The humans had not been some ancient relic of history, nor had they been a lost species waiting to be rediscovered. They had chosen to remain unseen, to let the galaxy believe they were gone while they observed, waiting for the moment their intervention was necessary. And now, they had made their presence known, not as allies, not as liberators, but as an undeniable force beyond comprehension. Illyra, the High Minister, spoke with a voice laced with quiet dread. We called them because we thought they could save us. But what if they were waiting for us to fail? What if this was the test? The thought settled over the room like a suffocating fog. The humans had not fought like any known species. They had not relied on brute force, nor had they engaged in traditional warfare. They had rewritten the battlefield itself, dismantling the Vekari not through destruction, but through erasure. No survivors, no remnants, just the cold, calculated removal of a threat. Syrah forced herself to speak, though her voice was hoarse. They said, "Do not call us again." She turned to the gathered officers. They didn't come to help us. They came to ensure that the galaxy remained within certain boundaries. And now, they have left us with a warning. Threx exhaled sharply. And if we ever fall out of line? Orin's fingers trembled over the console as he pulled up a final transmission, one that had arrived just before the humans disappeared. It was simple, yet chilling in its implications. The balance has been restored. Do not disturb it. The room remained silent as the weight of those words settled over them. The humans had not been myth, nor had they been lost. They had been waiting, watching. And now, the galaxy knew, when they returned, it would not be to fight a war. It would be to end one forever.